Welcome to the bunker, where we're recording a podcast for Solidarity, Not Charity. And with us today we have Paddy McShane, a former independent councillor in Causeway Coast and Plains, a whistleblower on a number of issues, most notably land transfers involving nepotism and financial or other incentives. Also we have Dean Blackwood, former public sector planner, civil servant, co-founder of the Environmental Gathering Community and environmental activist and external whistleblower. You're very welcome to our show.
Thank you.
So the point of the podcast is to have a thematic discussion with people who are experts or who are experienced on a particular team, and we have had youth volunteer to come and talk to us today about whistleblowing and about alleged corruption across councils. So just if we want to start with giving a wee bit of the background for each of you, just to give a brief introduction for what issues we're going to be talking about today.
Well, of course, the Causeway Coast and Glens one was well versed in the press. It's been making waves for 5 years. It centres on land transactions and asset disposals at knockdown prices, with nepotism involved and people involved and organisations involved that were getting lands, basically public lands, for a private development. One of the biggest, or one of the most well-known cases, was the £1 land deal for a hotel development. And what that was essentially was unlocking lands by giving council lands over. Them council lands would have been valued independently at £800,000, and without the knowledge of the council were sold for £1 by the chief executive and a number of other individuals within the council. The council were never informed of the valuation or the price. In fact, the valuation was got a year after the land was disposed of. But much less known was another asset in Coleraine was sold to an organisation or a charity. They call themselves the Honourable Irish, and the Honourable Irish obtained land for £5,000, which would have had an independent valuation of £500,000. And together with a number of other land transactions, these were investigated a number of times, and each and every time the investigations were mothballed, were closed down, were interrupted with, and at no time at all was the main protagonist taken out of the picture, so an independent verification and an independent process could take place. At all times, these civil servants had the finger on the pulse of the investigations into themselves.
So what you're saying then is that, I don't know, many councillors or aldermen there is in Causeway Coast and Glens, none of them had any idea that this type of stuff was going on. And if that's the case, why do we have elected reps? Is it a case that the civil servants or the chief executive and that are running the show?
Well, it's absolutely the case. It goes without saying that civil servants run this part of the world. The independent members, 16 of them would have been in the planning. There's been 40 in total. 16 would have been in the planning, which would have included me, and we wouldn't be allowed to partake in something that was coming up through both land and asset disposals and through a planning process, because it would create a conflict of interest where you would be responsible for both selling land, passing a planning application, and really you could enrich anybody you wanted to if you had that sort of power. So these were separated. So at no time was I aware that this was being sold, and 16 members wouldn't have been aware of this. But after the planning application, there was concerns raised to me, so I went back and investigated it. That's when I decided to blow the whistle, when I found out exactly how the land was transferred, how it was sold, what valuation was done, and when the valuation was done, and the fact that an asset worth £800,000 had been sold for £1.
Absolutely shocking, because I'm sure when you found that out, you must have been shocked. And did you find the same attitude from the political parties or other councillors? Were they as shocked and that basically assets belong to the public were given away almost?
I think if you look at political parties, you have maybe 14 members, 6 members, 9 members of these large political parties and these organisations. And immediately the overwhelming sense I got is, oh, we missed this. Why is an independent councillor coming and speaking about this to us? We've actually faux-pas here. We've missed it. But at no time was there a competitive edge to it within politics. I actually handed it over to one of the political parties and asked them to deal with it. They had obviously dealt with incidents like this in the past. They had much more power than me sitting as an independent had, and I was actually of the belief that they would take over that. But since that, and because people remain in post, these civil servants remain in post, they were essentially, it's too cruel to say bought off, but they were incentivised, is probably a better word, and pet projects, etc., came to the fore to ensure that the smooth passage of those elected to protect the public purse weren't going to ripple or rock the boat with the establishment in Causeway Coast and Glens.
Weren't these all people that weren't terribly experienced in this as well? Because didn't planning, isn't one of the powers that devolved to local authorities through the review of public administration?
That's actually an excellent point, and probably one that we could labour on. But councillors, and I say with respect to all councillors and myself included, do not have the wherewithal to take on planning powers. A couple of hours training, a ham sandwich and a bowl of soup, and then a couple more hours training, and we're supposed to be the enlightened going out the door. We're planners after that 4-hour session, and we're supposed to be taking on people that has their entire background is in planning, and their entire education for the last 6 years, plus probably 20 years of experience on top of that.
But it's probably a bit deeper than that, I would say, Paddy, because you have people like Dean, who's challenging the system a long time. Dean, excuse me, Dean's background, your background, Dean, is from a planning perspective, and it's my understanding that you're constantly fighting and struggling and having to take people to court. It's not a case that it's some of these people, they're just not capable. When it's pointed out in black and white, they still have a resistance. Would that be accurate, or can you give us your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that is pretty much accurate. And just before I come on to that, actually, one of the points that Paddy's making there is that he went away and investigated it. He shouldn't have had to go away and investigate it. Similarly, citizens raising concerns shouldn't have to be carrying out those investigations. If they're raising those concerns, there should be the expectation that they will be robustly investigated.
By who would we expect?
You would expect that it would be done by either the organisations, but there's a problem there, or it should be done by an external organisation, a scrutiny body like the Northern Ireland Audit Office. I suppose what I will bring to this conversation, hopefully, is sort of two perspectives. One from, and you'd mentioned my planning background. I've worked in planning as a public servant my entire career. The last 7 years I spent, I led a team, an internal scrutiny team within the DOE planning service, and part of our role was to embed a counter-fraud culture into the organisation in planning, but also to investigate whistleblowing concerns raised internally and raised externally, and indeed we actually even were required to produce an external whistleblowing policy. After I left, which was over 10 years ago, my experience has been completely different to how those whistleblowing concerns should be investigated. Yeah. And in fact, it's probably even worth emphasising at this early stage is the first thing you learn as a professionally trained whistleblower investigator, a whistleblowing investigator, is you must secure the evidence. You must sort of decide what is the evidence, and you must secure it, and you must establish the factual substance of the claims that are being raised with you, and keep in contact and reassure the whistleblower, whether it be a civil servant or whether it be a member of the public. But that is not what happens now. That's not the...
No. Because you're now a whistleblower, and your experience with the system is...
Precisely. I have raised external whistleblowing concerns on a number of instances. One that involves significant potential waste of public money in relation to what was known as the aggregates levy credit scheme. And without getting into the details of it, this was a scheme unique to Northern Ireland where quarry operators would be given tax relief of up around 80% on every tonne of virgin materials like new sort of sand or gravel that they extracted, and that was on a tax of £2 a tonne at the end of when the scheme ended. And the fact is that there was stipulated requirements for them to get that